Phew, my life is ruined. I had waited so long for those words. They meant my revenge had succeeded. I had ruined my boss's life and destroyed her business. I always knew I never belonged in their world of effortless perfection. I'm Jenna, the hidden architect behind Brianna Carter's glittering empire. The Carters had money, influence, and power, yet they were clueless about seizing control of their own destiny. When Brianna dreamed of launching a chic Manhattan boutique, I meticulously drafted every detail, negotiated with investors, and secured partnerships with top local designers. My work was taken for granted, expected as part of the deal. Then, during a lavish charity event filled with shimmering chandeliers and expensive gowns, I heard the words that cut deeper than any betrayal. Brianna declared that my help was no longer needed. Stepping out into the rain-soaked streets that night, I felt the cold drizzle wash away years of unrecognized effort. In that moment, I resolved that if they wouldn't value me, I'd build my own empire, one where I alone would control my destiny, no matter the cost. The next morning, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Brianna, Mr. Carter, even Logan, the overlooked younger brother, were all reaching out. Their voices, laced with panic and desperation, begged for the help they once took for granted. I sat in my modest Manhattan apartment, its sparse decor a stark contrast to the opulence I'd just witnessed. Instead of answering, I allowed their pleas to echo unanswered, each silent moment a reminder of my newfound liberation. At the same time, I plunged headfirst into my secret venture. In dim, smoke-filled backrooms of Brooklyn, I began striking deals that blurred the line between audacity and illegality. I forged risky alliances with shadowy investors, orchestrating trades that flirted dangerously with insider information. Every covert meeting, every hushed negotiation fed my hunger for control and revenge. With every risky signature on those clandestine contracts, I felt my power grow and their crumbling world shrink further into insignificance. Under the cover of night, I found myself stepping into the decaying corridors of a Brooklyn hangar, where the remnants of industrial grandeur met the pulse of clandestine deals. The atmosphere was dense with whispered secrets and the distant hum of illegal transactions. It was in this shadowy labyrinth that I first encountered Dylan, a man whose dangerous charm and uncompromising attitude set him apart. His confident stride and piercing gaze told stories of high-stakes risks and unspoken alliances. We locked eyes across a room filled with murmurs and furtive glances, and in that silent challenge lay the promise of both defiance and desire. As the ambient light danced on his rugged features, our conversation quickly transcended business, sparking an electric connection that defied the cold rules of this underworld. That charged encounter left me questioning if passion could truly mix with the calculated risks of a world where trust was as rare as a safe investment. Late one evening, as I sifted through an endless stream of routine emails in my sparse office, a single message caught my eye. The subject was blunt: hostile takeover imminent. There was no signature, just a cold warning that rival investors were planning to dismantle the fragile Carter empire. In that moment, the email became more than just information. It was a call to arms. I immediately began piecing together the clues it offered, combing through financial reports and internal memos I'd quietly collected over time. Every detail confirmed one thing: the Carters were vulnerable. While the city slept, I reactivated a network of shadowy contacts who thrived on chaos and uncertainty. Their voices, terse and laden with unspoken threats, fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let their downfall pass me by. I was going to harness it and transform their imminent collapse into the launchpad for my own rise. Under the shroud of a moonless night, the silence of deserted back alleys was abruptly shattered by an unexpected presence. A lone figure emerged from the darkness, a hulking bodyguard dispatched by Mr. Carter to silence my rebellious spirit. His intent was clear: to intimidate and reclaim control over a situation he believed was slipping from their grasp. I felt my pulse quicken, not from fear, but from the raw, pent-up fury of years spent in the shadows, undervalued and dismissed. Without a word, he lunged forward. In that instant, all the suppressed pain transformed into a singular focus. Our clash was sudden and brutal, fists meeting flesh in a violent rhythm. Each blow I delivered was a reclaiming of power, a cathartic release of every slight I had endured. The grunts of exertion and the echo of our struggle reverberated through the cold night. In one decisive moment, I turned the tide, overpowering him completely. As he crumpled to the ground, his shocked eyes mirrored the bitter irony. They sent me to be silenced, but instead, I roared with the strength of my own liberation. Word of the Carter Empire's unraveling spread like wildfire through New York's high-stakes boardrooms. Rumors of staggering financial missteps and desperate retreats filled the air as investors scrambled to cut their losses. I sat in my modest office, watching the carefully constructed illusion of power crumble piece by piece. Every incoming message, from Brianna's trembling pleas to her father's curt, unforgiving warnings, and even Logan's tentative voice, spoke of a legacy in freefall. Instead of responding, I let each desperate notification fuel my resolve. In smoky conference rooms and over whispered phone calls, the elite debated their next move while I meticulously observed their decay. Their perfect world was disintegrating under the weight of its own arrogance, and with every ignored call, I savored my role as the silent architect of their downfall. This was no mere collapse. It was the opening act of my ascent. As twilight gave way to the inky expanse of night, I escaped the chaos for a rooftop refuge high above Manhattan's relentless pulse. There, waiting with a mixture of familiar warmth and distant regret, was Alexander, my former lover from a world that had once prized polished appearances over raw authenticity. We had both long since abandoned the glittering masquerade of high society, but in that secluded space, our shared history stirred anew. Over a private dinner beneath a scattering of city lights, every course became a reminder of moments lost and rediscovered. Our conversation flowed unreservedly, unburdened by past pretenses, until the inevitable forbidden kiss bridged the gap between us. That kiss wasn't merely an act of passion, it was our silent rebellion against a life defined by others' expectations. In that electrifying moment, I felt a profound liberation, a fleeting glimpse of a future where my desires and decisions were mine alone. In the dim light of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Brooklyn, the air felt heavier than ever. I had arranged to meet Dylan, the same enigmatic man whose forbidden kiss once sparked a dangerous thrill between us. But as he stepped forward, his eyes betrayed secrets I wasn't meant to know. With a hesitant tone that barely masked his guilt, he admitted he'd been feeding information to the Carters, orchestrating behind-the-scenes moves to salvage their crumbling empire. The shock of his betrayal cut deeper than any physical blow. In that charged moment, the memory of our illicit passion turned sour. Instead of the tender intimacy we once shared, his confession ignited a wildfire of raw, seething anger within me. Words were swallowed by the sudden eruption of violence. Our confrontation escalated into a brutal, unrestrained clash. Each punch was fueled by the sting of treachery and the unbearable weight of shattered trust. In the chaos of fists and fury, I realized that in our perilous world of high stakes, loyalty was as transient as a whispered secret in the dark. I met Brianna in an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts, a place that mirrored the desolation of our broken ties. I arrived with a storm of anger and sorrow churning inside me. There she stood, vulnerable yet defiant, eyes darting between seeking forgiveness and pleading for the old bond we once shared. But all I saw were the ghosts of every sacrifice I'd made and every moment of neglect. Our words quickly escalated from tense accusations to a heated clash. Brianna's feeble explanations, dripping with regret, only fueled my wrath. In the dim light, the confrontation turned physical. Every punch I threw was a cathartic release of years of pent-up pain. Every desperate parry from her was a reminder of how deeply I'd been betrayed. The cold concrete and rusted metal bore silent witness to our unraveling. Two souls locked in a bitter struggle that left no room for the past, only the raw, unyielding resolve to never be taken for granted again. At exactly 2003, everything shifted. Standing in the remnants of what once was the Carter Empire, I felt the full weight of every betrayal, every long-suffered slight, and every bitter victory. The neon glow of New York cast long shadows over abandoned boardrooms and silent corridors, a fitting backdrop for a finale. With one deliberate motion, I closed the door on a world that had never valued me, sealing away the echoes of broken promises and hollow accolades. Every risky deal, every secret meeting in the dead of night had forged my own empire, a realm built not on inherited privilege, but on relentless ambition and the scars of survival. As I stepped out into the urban twilight, I carried the bitter sweetness of victory. Their regrets, once so loud, faded into insignificance, overshadowed by the resolute power of a woman who finally claimed her destiny.